everyone. It's Ron and Debbie, and we are back for another edition of Ask Ron. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, here we go, Ron. First question is from Bob Campana from Ohio.
Bob Campana. Bob, been around forever.
He's a long timer?
Long timer.
All right, well, good. I'm glad he wrote in. Okay, his question, how does Dodd-Frank affect the amount of land contracts that can be done by an individual investor or an entity? Can you do balloon payments on a land contract?
All right, Bob. I've been asked that question many times, and the answer is nobody knows the answer for sure. Because Dodd-Frank has not been challenged yet, but here's the rule, and I read the whole thing. If you sell with owner financing more than 3 houses in a year, then the rule says that you have to comply with Dodd-Frank. Now, first, that has nothing to do with lease options. And I'm not sure you want to sell with owner financing. If I were you and I was in Ohio, I'd do lease options. However, there's an exclusion that says that these have to come from one entity. Now, if you're taking title into a land trust, that's an entity, and there's only one house in it. So there's only one house going to be sold from that entity because the trust is dead when it's sold. My opinion is that immediately eliminates you from having to worry about Dodd-Frank. That is only my opinion. It has never been tested. What would have to be tested is a trust and entity in the eyes of the law. And I don't know why they could say it wasn't, but somebody could challenge that. First of all, I don't know why they'd have reason to challenge it. I can tell you right now, the government doesn't care anymore. Trump don't care anymore because he's trying to get rid of that Dodd-Frank rule anyway. So, go at your own pace. But remember, you have to sell with owner financing for it to even apply, and in 3 out of 1 entity. So if that bothers you, just don't sell 3 out of 1 entity.
Right. And Ron, he did ask, or he added that I use land trusts with a trustee for each property, and some have my beneficiaries as my IRA. So that is, I believe, what you said.
Well, what's the question though?
No, well, I was just adding that that is currently how he's doing it. He is using the land trust with the trustee to put each one in.
Perfect. But one trust is one entity, one trust, one house.
Okay, got it. And he did add that even his attorney is confused.
I'm telling you, there's no clear-cut answer because the law is so vague, so poorly written. By the way, I've talked to 4 attorneys. Paid one of them to give me an opinion. And guess what his opinion was? We don't know for sure. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about Dodd-Frank, but that's my humble opinion. So, if you do something that causes somebody to come after you, we'll keep you in our prayers. Just kidding, Bob.
That's the best answer I've heard.
I would not worry about Dodd-Frank if I were you.
All right, Ron. Okay, so next question is from Martin Delores from Georgia.
Okay.
I met with a FSBO seller who is willing to finance. This is my first deal on Planet Ron. Will this deal count as my first deal? If it's a deal I don't want to exit, I plan to live in this home myself.
Sure.
Okay, the seller is asking $40,000 down, 1 year financing or lease option, $30,000 down, $2,000 per month purchase in 1 year.
Well, I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. First of all, 1 year balloon is ridiculous. Don't you ever get into that. That just means you got to go refinance it in a year. You didn't learn that on Planet Ron. Like you learned the opposite.
Right. Well, this is what he said he negotiated. So I negotiated $10,000 down, 2 years financing, asking price $460 with homes selling for $600,000.
Well, I don't know about the $460 versus the $600, but if you intend to make this your residence, get rid of that 2-year balloon. Period. All you're doing is creating a problem you have to fix later. I mean, very bare minimum 5 years. That gives you plenty of time to live in it. And plenty of time for hopefully the equity to grow and the debt to go down. You build up a lot more revenue. And then 5 years, you're probably going to be ready to move anyway. Sell the darn thing. And remember, if you don't live in it for 2 years, it's a taxable event when you sell it. So you got to live in it for at least 2 years. But I don't put yourself in a trap like that. Just go back and renegotiate. We're okay on all of the terms except I cannot do this 2-year thing. It's got to be a minimum of 5. And watch how fast they cave in on you.
Okay. All right. Next question is from Armindo Gonzalez from Florida.
Okay, Armando.
Can you do a subject to on a property that has a HELOC?
You can, but if the lender finds out, they're probably going to call the loan due. So better make sure you have clear disclosures. But you know, same thing is true with the wrap. If you buy it on a wrap, the one loan they could call due if they learn title is transferred along with a reverse mortgage. Now, if you're okay with that, and if you're equipped mentally to handle it when they do, then it wouldn't stop me, but it would change my exit strategy, because I'd put somebody in the house that has a good chance of getting qualified, like within the first year, and then help them get qualified if they need it, to take out that loan and do away with any chances of the bank calling the loan due. Now, if the bank calls the loan due, it's not going to affect you personally because you didn't guarantee the debt, so it's not your debt. But now you got to go deal with that tenant buyer. If you give them a year and they haven't bought it, well, okay, it's their problem if they haven't bought it within a year. Their option is expired. But just the same, when I put them in there, I'm going to make sure that they can qualify within a year, and then don't have to worry about any bank messing with my life. And if the bank did call the loan due during that first year, I would just show him the lease. I'd show him the buyer. They'd probably be the ones that finance the buyer. Banks do not want houses. Trust me, that's the last thing they want. It's like the plague to a bank. And however much equity in it is totally irrelevant to a bank. So they'll bend over backwards if and when the time came when they ever want to call the loan due. That would be the time to just tell them the truth. I bought the house. Here's the deed. Here's what I've done. Here's the tenant buyer. Give us time and we'll get this thing cashed out.
Okay.
And, you know, if we have to get nasty, we can get nasty, because we can stop any kind of a foreclosure if we want to. You know, litigation is a business tool, not something to be afraid of. Sometimes you have to use it on your end. And it's better always to be the plaintiff than the defendant. That I know.
Okay, well, I would agree with that. Okay, next is from Randy Connolly from Massachusetts.
Randy?
Can you form one LLC as the manager to be the trustee on all of your properties, with the beneficiary being your IRA, with another LLC being the IRA's beneficiary? And if not, what is the least confusing way to structure this?
No, you're almost there. You made one fatal flaw there. An LLC cannot be the beneficiary of an IRA. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. So that means you have to be the beneficiary of the IRA. And I mean just you, not you and your spouse. So each of you should have an IRA. Now, can your IRA be owned by an LLC? The answer is yes. And you should take title into a land trust. Let the LLC own the land trust. And then if your IRA owns the LLC, so be it. In fact, that's exactly what I do.
Okay. All right. Next is from Yong Xu from New York.
Yeah.
I spoke with a real estate closing attorney listed on your Gold Club site today.
Mm-hmm.
As I was told that since I just formed my LLC with 2 members, I can just list myself and my wife as the members of this LLC. And then documented in the operating agreement, something like I got 99% and my wife got 1%. I was told that there's no need for taking title using tenants by the entirety rule, since I already got an LLC with more than 1 member. She basically told me tenants by the entirety is only for couples that don't have an LLC or have a single member LLC. Is this correct?
Well, first, I don't know if New York is a tenants by the entirety state, because if it isn't, it's a moot question. If it is, I disagree with her. Tenants by the entirety, first of all, would not have a 99 and 1%. It's 100% undivided, and that's what makes it an asset protection tool. Undivided means that a judgment against one of you cannot attach to something both of you own undivided. Now, the problem with our argument is that's not the case if your interest is divided. So if a creditor gets a judgment against you, they may be able to get through your LLC and take your part of the LLC. And of course, now they'd be partners with your wife. So I really just don't agree with it. I'm not an attorney. Besides, what harm is there in owning the LLC tenants by the entirety? What's the difference? It can be listed that way just as well. It can be listed 99 or 1%. And by the way, there's no such thing as 1% for your wife. Your wife is going to get 50% no matter what you put in that document. So you might as well come to grips with the fact that that's going to happen. So you better stay married, because if not, you're going to, I don't care what your documents say, she's entitled to have your estate at least.
Right. I'm a wife, Ron, and I agree with that sentiment.
I know you do. I know you do.
Okay. Hopefully that helped. Okay. Next is from Jennifer Delle from New York.
Jennifer?
If we were buying a house with a wraparound mortgage and the seller passes away down the road and your tenant buyer is not ready to purchase yet, what happens? It hasn't happened to us, but we do talk with a lot of older homeowners, and this question keeps coming up.
Well, as far as you're concerned, nothing, because whatever the agreement was with the seller passes on to their heirs. If you look in the very first paragraph of your contract, it says this applies to all heirs, successors, and assigns. In this case, the heirs and successors and assigns means their relatives, not somebody you assigned a contract to. So the relatives are bound by the agreement that the parents created. And that may mean that the property's got to go through probate first, but it may not mean that as well, because you already own the property and your documents are pretty clear. This is why we close with the attorneys, okay? This is why things like this are taken care of on the front end with the proper documents. But you don't need to worry about that. If they die, it doesn't affect your rights, except maybe you might have to wait for some court action on their part to clear up their estate.
Okay, that was it for this week, Ron.
Okay. All right, guys. Can't wait like you to get out there in the real world again, but we got to do what we got to do. So stay safe. And I'll see you next week. Same time, same channel.
All right, guys. See you next week. Bye.